13. It comes on the beginning part of this chapter, right before the promise that we know as the children of God, the signs of the times and the end of the age. So you can get the context of this text just by that verse itself, knowing that the whole theme that followed that verse is signs of the end, time of the end. And then right after that verse, you start the next title is, times of tribulation. So you can almost perceive where we're going with this message. But the part I want to focus on is this fact about us endurance, because endurance is something that we all need. The story is told in November 1942, a 25-year-old Chinese seaman named Poon Lim was working as a steward on a British merchant ship called the SS Ben Lomond. After leaving Cape Town, the vessel was torpedoed by a German U-boat near South Africa coast. As the ship sank, the story says, Poon Lim grabbed a life jacket and jumped overboard just as the ship's exploded. The story said that Poon Lim floated around the Atlantic for 2 hours, then spotted an empty craft and was able to pull himself aboard. That was the beginning of one of the most amazing sagas of survival that sea ever recorded. He was thankful for the meager supplies in that lifeboat: a canvas sail, chocolate, can't live without chocolate, chocolate, a bag of sugar, some flares, a jug of water, and a tin can with biscuits and a flashlight. The story said that 7 days into the ordeal, he frantically tried to get the attention of a ship that passed by but did not see him. Then he spotted 7 U.S. Navy patrol planes, 7, mind you, Navy patrol planes. He shut the flares up, but they did not notice him. But a German U-boat did spot him and chose to leave him to die. Imagine that. Salvation was close at hand, and still they decided to leave him to die. So Poon could have given up and died. But instead, he decided to use his skills and the limited supplies he had to stay alive. He rationed himself with 1 biscuit and a few mouthfuls of water a day. He made a fish hook from the flashlight springs and used to catch, it's a piece of fish. A fish to eat a bit. He ate a biscuit. He ate some of the fish. And it started getting difficult and difficult to stay healthy. He chose to swim daily to keep his muscles active. He says at one time, things was getting so frantic, so he even caught a shark. And he took that shark and he ate some of this liver. And the time things were getting difficult because once he was creating some of the supplies, a storm came in and washed a lot of the supplies away, so he had to survive again. So the story says that he was able to catch a bird that landed on his raft and drank his blood to survive. When things are desperate, things are desperate. He said he lost 20 pounds from his ordeal. But on April 5th, 1943, he staggered ashore in Brazil, and he survived at sea for 133 days in the Atlantic. From Cape Town to Brazil, it was 3,940 miles. That's the distance the current took him and survived. Talk about endurance. Endurance. God is calling us to endure what we have believed, what we have accepted. To endure implies risk. It implies desire. It implies dedication. It implies, facing odds in your life. To endure. In our plagued world that we live in, this sinful world, we face difficulties, a lot of challenges. Like waves of the sea floating over us, constantly challenge us to a better life, the circumstances. But if we cling to Jesus, He has promised to keep us afloat through every trial and give us strength to endure. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Well, at least I got one okay. What do us believe? Do we believe that God can help us through trials and difficulties? Do you believe that? I hope you do, because otherwise, we're just floating around endlessly in our life, just trying to survive. We sang the song early this morning. It says, this is not a place that we're going to be staying forever. This world is not our home. Enduring means hanging on to Jesus, because John 15 says, apart from me, you can do nothing. Endurance means holding on to Jesus, to His promises, and making them our own. Endurance means, yes, Lord, I'm going to submit. I don't understand what's happening or why I'm dealing with what I'm facing, Lord, but I'm going to trust. Endure in our faith during the trials that will come into our lives. When you consider that salvation is individually, we at times will be standing alone with the challenges ahead. But never alone when you consider that God is by your side. Endurance in the context of suffering might also imply patiently waiting for Christ's return. But in the present, it was just about the second month of COVID had hit when me and my wife found ourselves, in the hospital. Both of us sick with COVID. But that illness itself, at first, I don't know, a lot of our church members did, but there was a lot of church members that did say that I refused to believe that it was real. In the hospital as a chaplain, seeing it constantly, I was still doubting its meant to have COVID. But when you have it, I was there fighting for my life. I couldn't breathe inside. I was praying like you never prayed before. Have you ever found yourself near death? Or you think you're near death. It feels like it's near death. And you start praying to God. Not a casual prayer, but prayer with tears. You open your heart, and those tears, you start crying out to God. And then at times, I find myself like Job. Job never got an answer to what he had to face, what he faced. The circumstances that Job faced, God never explained why it happened. But Job endured. Then I find myself as, Lord, I don't want to be like Job. I don't want to face the challenges. But there I was in the emergency room, trying to catch my breath. The heart starts beating really fast. The oxygen did not help much. The doctor comes in and says, Chaplain, we're going to try something new with you. It's worked in the past, but we're going to try it with you. We're not sure how it's going to affect you, but we're going to try it with you. So they did something. They provide this serum, this new type of treatment. I forgot what it's called. I knew it back then, but I forgot it's called. It's a new treatment that went through my IV and said, we're going to try this for you, but we need to observe you for the next 6 hours, see how you react. There I was, waiting for this medication to do what it's supposed to do. But at the same time, praying, Lord God, help me. If this is it. You brought me from Hawaii, this is it. I'm about to retire, I know, but this is it. A friend once told me, a faith not tested, listen to me, a faith not tested can't be trusted. You get it? It can't be trusted. Now, will I trust Jesus despite the circumstances? Will you continue to be faithful even if He chooses not to save you, to heal you? Will we still stay strong to Jesus even though He doesn't answer my prayer the way I want Him to pray? I want Him to answer my prayer. Would you and I trust God even if you are now crossing in this unbearable sea called fear? Because fear is real. Fear of the unknown. I wasn't sure I was going to come out of this or not. I did not know how long it would take. I know that God answers prayers, and one of my friends says, Pastor, God answers prayers. Sometimes He says yes, sometimes He says no, and sometimes He says, hold on. I didn't like those answers. I wanted it now. Trust. Would you trust Jesus? On your sea of illnesses, anxiety, depression, mental problems, loss of job, will you and I trust Jesus when they say there's nothing else? The problem you have is incurable. You now have a chronic illness that there's no cure for it. You just have to learn to live with it. And there she was. She was in her late 50s with a chronic illness there's no cure for. COPD. Disease of the lungs. There's no cure for COPD. There's treatments to help you manage it, but eventually it catches the best of you. But she wanted healing. She wanted recovery. Be that person that she was before the illness. And when I walk into the hospital to make visits, and I'm the hospital chaplain, I'm here to see how I can help you. Are there any spiritual needs you want? Yes, I have a spiritual need. I need to be healed from this illness. As you have already guessed, I am not God. I don't have the power to heal. I can bring some kind of comfort to this person. Now, is that lack of faith and trust? Depends who you ask. She wanted healing. All I could offer was prayer in hopes that God will hear our prayer. Now, is that lack of trust? I hope you hear my prayer. We face the challenge, her illness, and me, my faith. But God impressed me to take her to a different direction of trust. Trust. God's way is always the best way, but you have to learn to trust. And I told her the process is going to be long. You have a chronic illness. But God has the power to heal, doesn't He? Doesn't the Bible say that He can heal? That God will answer the desires of your heart? Isn't that what the Bible says? Yes. And I told her, I believe God can heal you, but my question to you is, will you still trust Him if He chooses not to? She was taken aback. Well, that's not the kind of answer I was looking for. The key was, will you still trust Him despite what you're facing today? Despite what you're dealing right now? If He chooses not to answer, will you still remain faithful? Endurance involves that. Hanging in there. Hanging in there. Even though you're not sure. Even though it's not clear. Hanging in there despite what others have told you. Hanging in there despite what it might seem to be a wasted time. You know, our salvation is worth fighting for, amen? Salvation is worth fighting for. It said, the Bible says, that it's given to those who fight, who endure, because you have to stay. You know, it's easy, it's easy, and I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's easy to die for Jesus, but to live for Jesus, that's a different story. Because it implies you have to endure. And at times you will be alone. Our salvation is worth fighting for, yes. Not to save ourselves, but to make a choice and stand with God through the good times and the bad times, like Paul did. And it says endure. Paul endured, like the thief in the cross endured, like Pum Lim endured, like you and I are enduring today. By being faithful to God. Jesus has not come yet, but the promise is he will come. You believe it? I've been in the gospel for over 35 years. I remember first started in the gospel, there was in this one church sign over in Hawaii that you drove by, you always, wherever you drive, you always see this big sign in the church. And it says, Jesus is coming. It's coming. I've been in the gospel, say, 30 years. Jesus is coming. Is it still true today? Amen. But you have to endure. You have to wait. Yes, it's easy just to give in to fear, to anxiety, to take refuge in whatever we can, legal drugs, legal alcohol, or people just choose, just let me sleep, just let me take it easy. I don't want to know about problems. I don't know what's going on in the world. I just want to sleep. I'm going to turn the radio off. I'm going to turn the TV off. I don't want to hear or see nothing. Just let me be in this enclosed place. Call home. Or sometimes we find some people who are shut-ins. Because I don't want to hear or see things that will bring anxiety to me. So they live in this trap called home. His name is Floyd. I met Floyd at the hospital to a patient. He has a lot of chronic illnesses, COPD, he has hypertension, he has diabetes. The list is so vague to talk about. He's overweight, and at times he's compliant, sometimes he's non-compliant. But non-compliant doesn't follow the doctor's advice. He does what he wants to do. I brought him one time. I said, Floyd, why can I bring you? I know you need some supplies. He'll take me to this house. We need to get some of this cake and that sugar cake. And he said, for Floyd, you're a diabetic. Yeah, but diabetics like sugar. I know they do. And he craved this, but Floyd, this is not good for you. I know, Chaplain, but I need it. I need to have it. So he knows what he's supposed to do and not to do, but sometimes his desire or his wants is stronger than his will to live. So he endures the best he can. So I'm trying to help him. To this day, we still visit Floyd. I still go and see him, check out how he's doing because he's a shut-in. He's, I don't know, when I was with COVID, I had 3 weeks at home. I could go out in the living room, I could go in the, but 3 weeks at home, crazy. But Floyd's been living in this trailer house for the past 10 years. That's his home. He only goes out for appointments. He only goes out to get food. But the rest of his life is the home. Endure. How to endure? So I go out there and encourage him to move forward, Floyd, to trust in God. Yes, sometimes it's easy just to give in and just find discouragement. But God says, endure. And that's what the promise is. I can do all things through Christ which strengthened me. When was the last time God strengthened you? When was the last time God strengthened you? Every day. You woke up this morning and you open your eyes, you're 75% ahead of some people who never did. Every day, God says, I'll give you strength. Who has to do the getting up? We have to do the part. The physical part, you and I have to do it. So God says, I'll give you the strength, but you need to do the physical part. I'll provide you my spirit, but you need to go out and do the evangelism. You need to go out and share the gospel. You need to go out and do your part. Like I said earlier, because apart from me, Jesus says, you can do nothing. Apart from Jesus, you and I are completely useless. But I found this one guy, said, well, Pastor, it was in an article. He was talking to one of his pastors saying, when I stopped being a Christian, this is what this young man said. When I stopped being a Christian, I found more peace and less trouble. When I gave up Christianity, I found peace. I was no longer tormented. Well, yeah, nothing matters. You don't sin, you enjoy the. He said, but for him, he says, I found it was better not to believe than to believe. Because when I believe, it seems that as soon as I accepted Jesus in my heart, all these troubles and problems come upon me. Have you noticed that? It's like that. I became a target. We've all been there. You see, the devil doesn't give up that easy. You know, in the story of Job, who was on trial? Job? Who was on trial? In the story of Job, when you read the story of Job, who was on trial? Was it Job? It was God. Because God introduced Job to Satan. He says, where you been? I've been around the world. Oh, have you noticed my servant Job? A man that avoids sin, a man that's holy and perfect. Have you noticed him? And the Bible says, when you read the story, it says, oh yeah, I noticed Job. I know who Job is, said this. I know where he lives. But Job only serves you because of what you do for him. Job only follows you because you bless him. Job is only with you because you protect him. But give me some space. Let me take away some of those things that he has, and he'll curse you to your face. And God, believe in Job, that the whole universe rested on that one commitment. Go ahead. Take, but don't touch him. Endurance when you're alone. It was the USS Okinawa. We used to call it the USS Okinawa for 4 years, like I told you. So one of those areas, they decided to take us out to sea for 6 months. We're patrolling the Indian Atlantic Ocean. We're patrolling. And in one of those situations, as a Seventh-day Adventist, I'm a ship. We're only 2 Adventists in the whole ship. At land, we have some privileges, but at sea, the captain is the captain. And being a conscientious on a Sabbath day, it doesn't fly. So I found myself in a situation where I was court-martialed at sea. They call it, I think they call it kangaroo court. You have no rights there at sea. Who are you going to complain to in the middle of the ocean? I found myself challenged, and I had to trust Jesus during my court-martial because refusing to work on the Sabbath day. I found it challenging to trust in Jesus when I was struggling with COVID and anxiety. But despite my distrust, my fears, Jesus pulled me through every circumstance. Stronger, trusting and believing in God. Oh, I still got punished, at court-martial. I got the due penalty. They challenged me. They told me, okay, we have 4 months before we go back to land. You can spend 4 months in the brig till we get to land, or you can submit and go back to work. I wish I could tell you that I chose the latter, but I didn't. I must have been 28, 29 years old. Fear did kick in. I didn't choose the latter. I didn't choose to suffer. I chose to give in. But every Sabbath that I ended up being called, and there was no work to be done, but they challenged me. Every Sabbath that I was called into work, I had to show up. It was a hell. But mostly not physically, but consciously. You can run away from anything, but you can never run away from your conscience. It was the worst 4 months of my life, consciously, because I knew what was happening. I knew what I was doing. and the struggle that came with it. But God gave me the strength to continue in His walk. Would you trust God in the difficult times? Will you endure? I pray that we do. See, God asks him, are you worthy to trust, to take my trust? As we continue to be tested by circumstances, God allows to see how we'll react in times of crisis. It's during times of crisis that we are developed, our character is formed. During the Marine Corps, I was telling you, at sea, God allowed this crisis to come upon me to see how I would react. Each time it came upon, this trials come upon us, is to prepare us, to strengthen us, to move forward. It's like when we're at sea. At sea, we remember one attempt that they at sea, that it's every 2 weeks, they would do drills at sea. Just in case the ship got torpedoed or sunk in, they always announce it, said, drill, 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 no, general quarters, general quarters, general quarters. Well, we're in the Marine Corps, we can't do nothing. So all the Marines had to go on their area, which is called, they used to call the snake pit because it's way in the bottom of the ship, and they lock it tight so that nothing can get in because it's all in areas. And they start saying, port side, 2,300 miles, port side, land on the port side. So they give you this direction so you prepare. Just in case you get torpedoed and you, for some miracle, you survive, you know which way to flow to. Really. So, but that was the general quarters. They were testing. Every 2 weeks, there was the drill, preparing everybody to go to their general to do what they're supposed to do and understand where you're at. The reason because the general quarters or the drill was to prepare us for the real drill, if it ever did happen. Remember, back then, we're talking back in 1980, so there was still, the Cold War was still going on. We had Russian vessels following us through the whole trip. They were always 10 miles away while we could see the light following us. We had spy planes going over us, and we could see them, but they would only get turned off. So we know it was difficult, but the drills prepare in case of the real thing. God is preparing us for the real thing that's about to happen to the world. Remember we talked about the trials and tribulations that are going to come upon us. In chapter 24, verse 15 and following is the Great Tribulation. So God says, endure. I'm going to prepare you to be ready for the time of tribulation. So you can be ready to endure. In the wilderness, in the story of Israel, God was preparing the children. In every crisis, brought opportunity to trust God, to depend on God, or to fall back. When you get a chance, when you go home, this is going to be your homework. When you go home, Exodus 15, 16, and 17. You remember that? Exodus what? 3 trials that God performs upon the children of Israel. Exodus 15, the first trial is the water crisis. They had just crossed over. They've been delivered from the Red Sea. They saw the miracle of God. He had just conquered the Egyptians. They crossed. Mary had, and Aaron, they had a big festival. They're dancing and praising the Lord because of His deliverance. Now they're walking towards the promised land. 3 days into their walk, they're running out of water. 2,000 plus people. 2 million plus people plus cattle and children. All this thing. So they're running out of water, 3 days into water. So God direction, because you're supposed to follow the cloud, right? Remember the story? When the cloud moves, you follow the cloud. So the cloud was leading them into this area of desert, and there's no water. And when you read the story in Exodus 15, it was intentional. God intentionally drove them that direction. Reading through, you'll see the verses to see where their heart was. On the 3rd day, the cattle have this keen sense. They smell water. And the cattle went wild and started running this direction. Well, the Israelites knew this. They knew what the cattle says. Oh, if the cattle are going the direction, there's water. There's water. So everybody started going the same direction. They're watering. And you know the story, chapter 15 of Exodus. When they get to the water, it turns out the water is what? It was bitter water. They couldn't. The cattle just jumped back. They couldn't drink it. The children couldn't drink it. But instead of calling for God, they complained to God. They complained to Moses. and God does a miracle. I don't know about you, but I've never seen, happen before. But he says, cut a branch from the tree that's right beside the river and throw it in the water, and the water will be good to drink. And it happened. The blessing, the miracle happened. He was testing us. He's testing you. That we can depend on him. We'll learn to depend on God is by being there with him. Learn to depend on God can be a challenge at times, though, right? To depend on God, especially if you become overconfident in your abilities. But you have to test this. On Exodus 16, the second crisis is the food crisis. They're tired of eating food. So God tested them on the food. On chapter 17, water crisis again, where Moses hit the rock and the water came out. You know the stories. And every time when you see the stories and you read the story, you see God testing his people. And every time they failed their test. Depending on God, it means trusting God. We're in Honduras on a mission trip. This is about 10 years ago. And I learned something else about trust. You ever been on a zip line? And they make it so easily, It's a cable that's hanging, This was all in Honduras. And this cable ranged from a mountain all the way down to the valley. And the height between in the middle was about at least half a mile high. I couldn't believe it until I looked down and said, well, it looks very deep down, very low. Anyway, I got on this cable, and they said, okay, let's try it. I've never done it. Let me get on this. And then when you're in a zip line, they said, there's a cable that's there. They give you this harness, and they hook these wheels on top, and you're supposed to hook onto that thing and sit and trust the cable. So somebody asked a stupid question. It was me. How often do you change the cable? You know what the reply was? Every time it breaks. So my next question is, when was the last time it broke, And he gave me some really, he noticed my nervousness, he started joking, he's playing on me now, he's playing on me. But this is the catchy part. Okay, now I had that on my mind. And he said, just hang on, Mr. Guajardo. Sit. And that first step, there's nothing. There's the ledges right there. And just step forward. Well, that's easier said than done, I told him. I have to believe, I have to trust this cable and this harness that's holding on me. Oh, I forgot one thing. Then he gave us this leather gloves, and the glove is supposed to be your brake. You have to that's your brake. Okay, remember, sir, always the brake's in the back, on the front, because then it gets cut over the back. So, okay. And I walk closer, and my friends are getting antsy. Hurry up. They've done it before. Come on, just do it. Stop being so scary. Don't be checking. Come on, do it. I said, this is serious. So I take that first step of faith. This is the key word. I took the step of faith. And the thing's going. It was amazing. As long as I hang in there. I was hanging on. I forgot about the brake. I was hanging on to dear life on this cable in front of me. What was called the heart. I was just hanging on to dear life, and the thing is going. And for some stupid reason, I decided to do a little maneuver. I don't know why into my mind. Oh, and I remember somebody before we did it said, hey, I can do this. So I did a little maneuver, and I went upside down. And when I came back up, I grabbed the cable to brake in the wrong place. I front. So the wheel caught on the glove. Now in the middle of this, in the middle of nowhere, hanging, the guys were way up there, and the other people were way on the other side, and I'm in the middle stuck, and I'm going, oh, Lord. And the guys are screaming, sir, hang in there. We're going to send somebody. I had to go find the light, because they couldn't put two people at the same time. We're going to find the lightest person we have to come and help you. Hang in there. And I'm hanging. Well, where else can I go? I'm hanging here. Where else am I going to go? Whatever you do, don't move around so much. And the wind is blowing out there, and then you look down. Back then we didn't have this camera. I wish I had this camera. I like to record. Because, I looked down and said, oh, I thought this is not half a mile. It's more like a mile out there. And I'm hanging in there. Lord, save me. You know how Lord, save me. I was the stupid one because and something told me just pull in the glove. hold the hand, pull tight, and let go, and it was gone. And when I landed on the other side, talk about it. In life, God's going to put you on a zip line of your life. And you have to take that first step of faith. And that step of faith is called trust me. Trust me. But Lord, don't look that good. See, our problem is we have a limited vision. Planes need a 5-mile radius vision so they can fly. Human beings, we like to have at least a quarter mile or more they can see. But God says, I do better than that. God can see into the future. So trust me. Lord, that road does not make sense to me. I know, trust me, I know the end. We only see the beginning, but I know the end. Trust me. The path of salvation is you have to take that narrow road unto salvation, right? Because wide is the road that leads to destruction. But the narrow road is challenging because it's bumpy. It's not straight. It's not paved. It's a lot of bumps along the way. But God says, trust me, I need to develop you to get you to Canaan, the Holy Land. What's the only thing that we take with us to heaven? It's not a car, so don't forget by buying a gold car. No car. A home ain't going. I don't know how much you're paying for your house, $300,000 home. It ain't going to heaven. The car ain't going to heaven because there's no fuel in heaven. So what's the only thing that we take to heaven? Our character. So God says, trust me, I'm forming your character to be worthy to be in heaven, because sin will not rise a second time. In Revelation 22, it says the thing that God's going to destroy at the end is sin. God is coming back with his with a glorious presence, and sin will be destroyed. The problem is, if you have sin with you, God is not meant to destroy humanity. He says, I'm here to destroy sin, but you have sin within you, or you're going to consume with it. Trust me, I'm preparing your character so you can be worthy to enter into the promised land. But God does the work. There's a book, Pastor Moore, The 95 Thesis of Justification by Faith. Okay? I encourage you to read that and get it. 95 Thesis of Justification by Faith by Pastor Moore. He has a lot of insight into, what we were talking about earlier. Sanctification, where we're justified at the cross, right? What's the next step? Justification, sanctification. It's a life process. While we're here, we're being sanctified. Glorification, when does it happen? On the second coming. So as we are being sanctified daily, is by submitting daily to Jesus Christ, and he's transforming us. Transformation is something you do. It's something that God does. Like I said earlier, what you and I need to do is to submit, give in to God's will. Learn to depend on me, God says. I will get you where you need to go. Just let me do the driving. Let me do the driving. No, Lord, you can be my co-pilot. I read all the books of Revelation. I know Daniel very well, Lord. In fact, when I go to Amazing Facts, I can review that a lot. So I know where I'm going. No, don't. Lord, just stay here. I know the way. He said, no, let me do the driving. Trusting God sometimes involves pain. So I'm going to close with this story. One of the pastors Bouillon was telling the story about his daughter. They were doing a mission. They were doing evangelism on South America, and while they're doing this service over there, this seminar, their daughter gets sick. She has high fever, and they're now in another country. They don't have all the usual stuff, so they're in a different country, away from home, and their youngest daughter, at 10 years old, gets this high fever. And they go to the hotel, they give the medication, nothing's working. The fever does not go down. The fever keeps going higher. So they call their mom back home, and mom said, son, the remedy for a high fever is cold water. Water as cold as you can, and just get it in there and knock the fever down. So what he did, he goes out there, he puts his shorts, the t-shirt on, he grabs on his daughter, and they fill the tub with as cold as possible the water can get, and he grabs his daughter, and he goes in the water with her, and the daughter starts kicking and screaming and crying and screaming and kicking, Dad, no, 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 get me out, it's too cold, it's cold. And he holds on to her, honey, just trust me, no, no. She starts kicking and screaming because the water was so cold. She starts shaking. When finally he pulls her out after 5 minutes in the water. Mama grabs her with a towel, just dries her, and she's still crying and crying. And just can't believe she's looking at Dad with those eyes like, Dad, I can't believe you did that to me. Why did you do that to me? She didn't understand. It was for her own good. So I just kissed her. Told her, honey, I love you. Trust me. And that's what God is doing for us today. Trust me. I know at times it's going to be painful. But trust me, I know how to get you there. I know how to get you there. Just endure and be faithful.